Now, before I get started today, I have to say, I got to give honor to my cousin, Bishop Clarence Fordham here. So before I start what I started today, I've always said that not only is he the bishop here, but he's also a role model for me for the simple, because he's given me a lot of good advice on things that we talk a lot. But I had no idea that he got down like that when it came to civil rights and protesting police brutality. So I'm honored to be here as you award him as such today. So because best of all, you did not wait until he was in his car before you chose to give this award and say good things about it. You gave him his flowers while he was still alive. Much respect, Bishop. Now, my text for today is from the book of Proverbs, 23rd chapter, the 7th verse, which teaches us, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. And that is especially true, especially in this is about legacy and all that. Because for reasons I'm going to get into today, we have been taught to think the worst of ourselves in order to maintain us as a permanent class of cheap labor. You see, so many people really believe that Black History Month was given to us, quote unquote, because it's the shortest month and the coldest month. That's nonsense. The truth is, it was started by a black man by the name of Dr. Carter G. Woodson in 1926 in order to encourage people to separate the truth from the trash when it came to us. And then it was originally Negro History Week because it was the birth week of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Yeah. Then because people began to celebrate it, and the celebration went further and further and further, expanded. It was then, 50 years later, the President Ford signed an act after popular demand, and it would be Black History Month. So it's important to understand that, you see, the average person knows primarily what they are told. But if you research things and look things up and correct it, you find that there's you do a good job of expanding your thinking through as Romans 12 chapter and 2nd verse teaches us the renewing of the mind. Okay? Now, to give you an example of this, you have these people who get on the Facebook and get on YouTube and they run around calling themselves conscious. They're saying that they vote and all this. And she knows exactly what I'm talking about. You got these characters filling the minds of our young people with nonsense. That Jesus was a fictional character. Telling them that Christianity is the white man's religion. And all this, and bring up to brainwash black people. All right, here is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. It is true that in West Africa, where many of our ancestors were taken, they originally dealt with traditional African religion, which many people here call voodoo, and the Muslims beat the Christians out there by about some 400 or so years. So a lot of them are Muslims. But in East Africa, you have Ethiopia, okay? And throughout the Old and New Testament, you hear things about Ethiopia. For example, 2 Kings, 19 chapter, 9 verse, talks about Terhaka, the king of Ethiopia. Psalm 68, 31 teaches us, princes shall come forth from Egypt, and Ethiopia shall set their hands before God. Song of Solomon talks about the queen of Sheba, saying, I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem. You have Acts 8 chapter, 27 verse, talking about Kansas. We are Ethiopia. Okay? So, if you have all this going on, and the fact that in Ethiopia, you have churches that were built long before the Roman Empire made Christianity the religion over there. Yeah. If that's the white man's religion, somebody's lying to us. Yeah, right. Okay? So, you have to be very careful about what you get on social media. Because you have a lot of embittered young people who did not have the guidance that many of us had when our communities were more stable, and you had a lot of more cohesive homes and all of that. They're growing up angry and bitter, and they're easily misled by the wrong kind of teaching. And so you basically have to understand that some of these folks call themselves woke, some of these so-called woke folks are not the jokes. I'm here to tell you right now. So it's best for you to, whenever you hear anything, you look up other sources to see if it can be backed up. Otherwise, you're talking a whole lot higher than they are themselves. All right? Yes. So I just gave you the sources, so they are facts. Now, I mentioned earlier about Africa, and I'm going to talk about my sojourn in Africa a little bit later on in this. But first, now, to show you how a lot of our people understood the power of the word back in the day, I'm going to tell the story that's seldom told in schools. But I've looked at the trial transcripts and the original records of this, and I'm going to share this with you. Here in Charleston, we had what was called the Denmark BC Slave Rebellion of 1822. Yes. And for those of you who don't know, here's the deal. Denmark BC was born in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, around 1767. And he was owned by a Charlestonian named Captain Joseph Beasley. And Captain Beasley needed somebody to do the paperwork for the plantation. So he taught Denmark how to read. And boy, did he live regret that. Because Denmark read other things. He read Exodus 21:16. That said, he that seeketh the man and selleth him shall be put to death. He read Revelation 13:10. That said, he that leadeth into captivity shall be led into captivity. Haven't heard that before, have you? Yeah, what about? And he also read about the Haitian Revolution, where the blacks of Haiti, under the leadership of Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, overthrew the rule of Napoleon, the most powerful dictator the world has seen at that time, to make the first free black republic in the Western Hemisphere. Didn't hear that at school, huh? Gee, I wonder why. But guess what? You might not have heard it in the classroom, but you know what? If you look hard enough and you know where to look, it's in the library. Yes. That's here. Okay? So Denmark read these things so you can tell where his mind was going with this. They came to Charleston around 1782. And Captain BC went to Denmark out to do chores for other slave owners. And while he was doing that, he would split the commission with Denmark. So Denmark was walking down East Bay Street, September 30th, 1799. When he came across a guy with a roulette wheel, crouched around him. The guy, round and round she goes, there she stops, nobody knows. Denmark placed a bet on number 1884 and won $1,500. So he went back to East Captain BC. Let's see, I'm sitting here running in my leisure. Oh, Denmark, come on in. What can I do for you, old boy? Got me busy. I have a question for you. Why, certainly, what is it? Sir, how much am I worth? Let's see how much you worth. Let me look at my leg. Let's see how much is it. Oh, there it is. According to this, you're worth $600. Why do you ask? Okay, I'm worth 600. Here's it. See ya. Wait a minute, Denmark. All right, sir. So Captain BC took Denmark to court. And Captain BC, and so on December 31st, 1799, Denmark BC was granted his freedom by Port Charleston, and he became a lay minister in the Hempstead AME Church on Charleston's east side. And while he was doing that, he gathered his followers to plan the Great Slave Rebellion of 1822. And here's how it worked. They were going to break into the city armory late at night and steal guns. And then they were going to go throughout Charleston, setting fires. And the slave holders came and put them out. throughout Charleston, freeing black people. And they would take the guns and lead them down to Charleston Harbor and hijack ships so they would sail to Haiti and to be free. But he warned his followers, do not tell the house slaves. And why should he not tell the house slaves? They run it out. Okay, May 25th, 1822, one of Denmark's fathers, William Hall, went down to the corner of Broad East Bay and they ran into a house slave. His name was Peter Prelude, owned by Captain John Prelude. He said, hey, Peter, what's going on? They're young, old, this boy, I need you, boss. Oh, I'm fine, Peter. Look at me. You want to get down over there in my pieces, dude? Easy on who that am, boss. So now, here's our plan. We're gonna you gonna do that, boss? Peter, wait a minute. Feet don't feel well. Hey, Peter, wait. You can tell where this is going, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. Peter ran back to his master, Captain John Prelude. Mr. Prelude, the boss man, sir. Oh my goodness, Peter, what do you mean by waking me up at this ungodly hour? What's the matter with you, boss? You're shaking like a leaf on a tree. Mr. Prelude, guess what this Denmark beast gonna do? Guess what he's gonna do? He is? Oh my goodness. That's Murgatroyd. This is outrageous, atrocious, and it's pretty bad too. I must call out the militia expeditiously, and right now. So he called out the militia. And Beasley and his 34 followers were captured June 16, 1822, and the court ruled that they would hang on July 2nd, 1822. Peter was fat and happy. City freed him, gave him financial stipend for the rest of his life. But there was a free and educated black man in Charleston by the name of Bishop Daniel Alexander Payne. He started a school for free and enslaved children over on Trash Street. And because Denmark Beasley used the Bible and history books and the Constitution to encourage revolution, the state of South Carolina made it illegal to teach an African American to read and write. So they shut down his school. But he didn't let that stop him. He went to Xenia, Ohio, where he started Wilberforce College, the first black college in America that was run by black people. Yes. And one of his graduates was Bishop Richard Harvey King, who came down here in 1865 and took what was left of the old Hempstead AME Church and built a new church on 110 Calhoun Street. And he said that this church would be named after the Hebrew word for God is with us and would be the mother of the new black churches in Charleston. And that's how Mother Emmanuel AME Church came to be. All right. And to show you how deep this stuff goes, after the fall of the Confederacy, you had what was called the Reconstruction period. This was where, after the Confederacy lost, the federal government tried to right wrongs by passing 3 constitutional amendments. The 13th Amendment in 1865 ended slavery throughout the country. The 14th Amendment in 1868 said that all persons were citizens with the right to vote. And the 15th Amendment guaranteed all men the right to vote who were born here. Women would get that in 1920 with the 19th Amendment. So with this came a lot of things that were censored from our history books for reasons I'm going to get into. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 1872, there was the first African-American governor. His name was Pinckney Benton Stewart Pinchback, and he was also the founder of Southern University in Baton Rouge, one of the largest black colleges in America. Here in South Carolina, from 1870 to 1877, there were 2 black lieutenant governors. Alonzo Jacob Ramsey, who lived on 33 Pitt Street here in Charleston from 1870 to 1872. Richard Howard Bleeds, who served from 1873 to 1877. And from January to April of 1868, they had a convention where they rewrote the Constitution of South Carolina to make it a state that promised equality. 76 blacks and 48 whites gathered there. Among them was the great Robert Smalls. For those of you who don't know, he's the man who sneaked himself and his slave family on a Confederate ship called the Planter in Charleston Harbor and sailed them off into freedom. Well, Robert Small started up at that Constitutional Convention. And January the 23rd, 1868, 155 years ago, and said these words: Resolve, all children between the ages of 7 and 14 must attend public school at least 6 months a year under penalty of non-compliance. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the first public school law ever passed this far south, below the Mason-Dixon line. Wait, how do I know that, you might ask? Well, in the South Carolina room at the Charleston County Library, they have the minutes of that 1868 convention. I went there and looked it up.
Yes.
So the problem is not that the stuff isn't there. It's that people are not told where to look. And that's part of the reason why I'm here today.
Wow.
So, anyway, this goes to show you the brilliance of what was going on. But wait a minute. If they were doing so well, you might ask, well, what happened? I'm going to explain that too.
Break it down.
You see, there was resistance to this. The wealthy class of whites, the planters who ran the state, their biggest fear was that the poor whites, in their poverty and illiteracy and subjugation, might find common cause with the enslaved blacks. And they feared that the two would come together and have a revolution that would throw these wealthy whites out of power. So to prevent that from happening, they gave the poor whites more privileges than their black brethren. And they encouraged the poor whites to look down upon and hate and separate themselves from the blacks. In simple terms, ladies and gentlemen, divide and conquer of the poor so that the rich can stay rich. And that's what racism is all about, Charlie Brown. So, December 24th, 1865, at the courthouse in Pulaski, Tennessee, 6 Confederate veterans gathered to form the resistance army against Reconstruction. They named themselves after the Greek word for circle, which is kuklos, and the Scottish word for family, which is clan.
Break it down.
Now you know.
Break it down.
That's how the Ku Klux Klan started.
Yeah.
And I read that in the official history of the Ku Klux Klan, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
I got a copy.
with all of this led to 12 years of bloodshed in the South and riots. Memphis Massacre of 1866, New Orleans Massacre of 1866, Meridian, Mississippi Massacre of 1871, Colfax, Louisiana Massacre of 1874, Clinton, Mississippi Massacre of 1875, Hamburg, South Carolina Massacre of 1876, Elton, South Carolina Massacre of 1876, and 146 years ago, November the 8th, 1876, right on Broad Street, downtown Charleston, blacks and whites shot out in the middle of the street. So, after that, the federal government said, yo, this is too much. We can't handle this, man. We tired of all this mess in the South. So they passed the Tilden-Hayes Compromise in February 1877, ending Reconstruction. And as a result of that, that's what led the Confederates to retake the South. And the nail fell on the coffin here in South Carolina in 1895. Senator Benjamin Ryan Tillman had a special session of the state legislature where they voted to throw out the Progressive Reconstruction Constitution and make the Segregation Constitution the law of the state. But here's what you don't know. 6 great black leaders. Robert Smalls, who I just talked about.
Yeah.
William J. Whipper, who Whipper Barry is named after. Okay? James Wade and Isaiah Reed, 2 black lawyers down in Beaufort. Thomas Miller, the founding president of South Carolina State University. Robert Anderson, a black teacher in Georgetown. These 6 men boldly got together and went to the State House and before the newspapers of the world to plead their cause before the state of South Carolina. Thomas Miller, founding president of South Carolina State, got up there and said, call us aliens, we aliens, we who have dammed the rivers to build up this great civilization that is the asylum to all freedom seekers of the world. If you call us aliens, then whom should the term citizens be applied? William J. Whipper got up and said that the car of Negro progress is coming, and you are doing what you can to stop it, but that should not be so. For the Negro will rise. Crush is the thing. The Negro will rise. we cannot be kept down forever because that is not the natural order of things. And so this went on so much until Robert Smalls, I told you about him earlier, right? His daughter said these words in regard to this. Indeed, it may have been an object lesson planned for the all-wise God to teach the haughty, boastful sons of Carolina that they are Negroes capable and amply qualified in every respect to protect themselves whenever it becomes necessary to do so. That these few representatives of our race are but a very small part of the rising host that time and education are bringing forward day by day in spite of lynching, in spite of prejudice, in spite of any methods used against them. They lost 116 to 7 in the legislature, and I wrote about this in my book, The 1885 Segregation Fight in South Carolina. Why? Because of this. Even though they lost, the story of what they did basically was the foundation of the civil rights movement in South Carolina. And so thus, they lost that battle, but in the long run, they won the war. And it's important that young people know this, because if these great men could do what they did back then under those conditions, imagine what you young people, within the sound of my voice, imagine what you can do today. With far more privileges, far more opportunities. Now, having said all of that, I went to Africa back in May. And when I got down to the plain in Dakar, which is the capital of Senegal, West Africa, a Gambian brother named Sekou Kassam come up to me. Salam alaikum, my brother. Welcome, Professor. I will be in my care during my time here. And the genuine brotherhood in which he showed me basically made a permanent impression upon me because he was so sincere about it. And so we drove into the city of Dakar in Senegal, West Africa. Now, it's one thing to intellectually understand that there are great cities in West Africa. But when you grow up in America where you are 1/12 of the population and you see this modern African city with all these skyscrapers and freeways and advanced buildings, basically in this black city run by black people in a black country in a black continent, the effect that it does to your mind is amazing. Yes. And it's important that I mention here how West Africa got like that. You see, back in the 1800s, Africa was divided up among the Europeans. Okay? And this is why some of them speak French, some of them speak German, some of them speak English, and so forth. Right? And you had a great man by the name of Marcus Garvey, who had a black newspaper called the Negro World. And he went around preaching that one day Africa would be liberated. Well, get this. In Kenya, East Africa, you had the people of, even though the British tried to ban the paper, people out in the wilderness of Kenya would read the Guardian newspaper and the message of liberation to the tribal groups surrounding them. And within these tribal groups were a group of young boys who would go even further back into the villages, remembering what they heard from the paper that was read, and recite this to the people who could not read. So that way, the message of Garvey outlasted him, even though he himself never went to Africa. And so you had a young man named Jomo Kenyatta who heard this, that later went on to become the liberator of the East African nation of Kenya. You had Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana who heard this message and became the liberator of Ghana. You had Leopold Senghor, the liberator of Senegal, who took that message and moved it forward. And as a matter of fact, I met professors who Leopold Senghor taught, and they told me this. They said, "You are a student of Leopold Senghor." And I said, "How is that?" They said, "Very simple. He taught us, and we are teaching you through our message. So therefore, he is a part of your education as well as ours." Deep, huh? And I went to the University of, the Diop University over there, as well as I spoke at the students at the University of Gambia. You walk into their libraries, you will see thousands of students and not hear a sound in the library. These folks are no joke. They're serious. And even in their poverty, they have the dignity of knowing that they can rise to whatever they want to rise to, knowing that they are in a country of their own. And I was just so moved. I'm still staying in touch with a lot of people over there. And when you see the pride of these people, even in their poverty, Muhammad Ali, when he went to the Congo in 1974 to fight Foreman, he said, you have a dignity in your poverty that we do not have. Wow. You see? And so I told the students in Gambia that when I get back to America, I'm going to tell the truth about Africa, because you have even more to teach us than we have to teach you. So one of the things that Marcus Garvey taught is that if you have confidence, you have already won before your battle has started. Yes. You see? And this goes within what Romans 12:2 says about the renewing of your mind and so forth. Because so many of us only knew what we were told, and they were told negativity to keep us a permanent class of cheap labor, many people had no choice but to teach their children negativity, because that's all they knew. But you know what? Your mind does not have to be limited to that. In every city, there are places with libraries, with these things called books, and they're free. Right now, they're talking about taking Black history out of school. Well, guess what? You're not helpless in that regard. There are libraries, there are bookstores. What you do is you go down there and you ask, what is age appropriate for my children? There you go. And those of us who know this, we come to the street corners, the social media, the YouTube, and all these other things. I have a YouTube channel myself called The American Storyteller, by the way. You take these things and you go out to the people like I'm doing right now in this church, and you take this message to the people, and hopefully some young person will listen. And why is that important? Because about 9 years ago, the great Indian leader Gandhi hosted a conference where there were a group of Black American scholars. Among them was Dr. Benjamin Mays down at Morehouse College, and Dr. Mordecai Johnson at Howard University, and Dr. Howard Thurman, who was a great theologian. And they asked him, Gandhi, what can we do? What can you do to come back to America and help the Negroes over there? And Gandhi said, well, I'm trying to make this stuff work for my people over here and free us over here. But I guarantee that it'll be through the Negroes of America that the world will understand what my message of nonviolence was about. And the men looked at each other, huh? And Gandhi's like, you'll see. Well, get this. 13 years later, Dr. Mordecai Johnson, Dr. Benjamin Mays were lecturing down at Morehouse College in Atlanta. And there was a 18-year-old young man who was in that audience listening to that message and soaking it up. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Martin Luther King. Yes. And I say that to tell you that you never know what effect your words may have on a young person. So that's why we got to speak life into these youth. And once we do that, that is the next level for the civil rights movement. It's a renewing of the mind to get the young people's minds right. And if you do this, I can guarantee you that God's going to smile on you. And by the way, while on that subject,